Most people think the brain rests when the lights go out. In reality, night is when the brain works the hardest. While the body lies still, billions of neurons begin a quiet repair process, washing away metabolic waste, reinforcing memory pathways, restoring emotional balance. And one simple choice made at night, what you eat before sleep, can either support this repair or silently disrupt it. When night falls, the brain does not drift into silence, it enters a carefully choreographed phase of maintenance that is only possible when the body is still and the mind is no longer reacting to the world. During deep sleep, spaces between brain cells subtly expand, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to move through neural tissue in slow, deliberate waves. This movement acts like a cleansing tide, carrying away metabolic waste produced during waking hours, substances that accumulate simply because thinking itself is a biological activity. If this nightly clearing is interrupted, these byproducts linger, increasing neural fatigue and gradually dulling clarity, memory, and emotional regulation. What is often overlooked is how fragile this process is and how powerfully it responds to what we consume before sleep. Foods eaten late at night influence blood glucose stability, hormonal signaling, and nervous system tone, all of which determine whether the brain can fully enter the deepest stages of sleep where repair is most active. When blood sugar rises sharply and then crashes, the brain interprets this as a threat, triggering stress hormones that fragment sleep and narrow those critical spaces between neurons. In contrast, gentle, slow-digesting foods help maintain metabolic calm, signaling safety to the nervous system and allowing the brain to shift fully into repair mode. This is not about feeding the brain energy at night, but about removing obstacles that prevent its self-cleaning systems from operating. During these hours, the brain is less concerned with fuel and more focused on clearance, recalibration, and restoration. The autonomic nervous system transitions toward parasympathetic dominance, heart rate slows, breathing deepens, and neural circuits disengage from vigilance. Nutrition that supports this transition acts indirectly yet decisively, preventing spikes in insulin and minimizing digestive stress that would otherwise pull the brain back toward alertness. Even mild digestive discomfort can activate sensory pathways that keep the brain partially awake, reducing the efficiency of its cleaning cycles. Over time, repeated disruption of this nightly maintenance can contribute to cognitive fog, mood instability, and increased vulnerability to neurodegenerative processes. The brain evolved to perform this work in darkness and stillness, relying on predictable internal conditions rather than stimulation. By choosing foods that respect this biological rhythm, we align with a system far older than modern schedules in artificial light. The brain does not need stimulation at night, it needs permission to let go. When that permission is granted through calm physiology and stable internal chemistry, repair becomes not an effort but an automatic expression of biological intelligence, unfolding quietly while consciousness rests, restoring clarity, resilience, and balance, without awareness, without force, and without demand, guided only by the conditions we allow it to enter as sleep deepens and the brain finally begins its most important work of renewal and cleansing as the night fully takes hold. The brain does not repair itself with abstract intentions. It rebuilds using physical materials drawn from the bloodstream, shaped by chemistry, and guided by timing. At night, when sensory input fades and neural firing slows, the brain shifts from rapid signaling to careful recalibration, reinforcing synapses, replenishing neurotransmitters, and restoring the delicate balance between excitation and inhibition. This work depends on the availability of specific nutrients that quietly influence whether the brain can descend into a restorative state or remain trapped in low-grade alertness. Certain amino acids serve as precursors for neurotransmitters that regulate calm, mood, and sleep depth, while minerals act as cofactors that allow these chemical transformations to occur efficiently. When these building blocks are present in the right proportions, the brain can produce signals that encourage relaxation rather than vigilance. One of the most subtle yet powerful effects of nighttime nutrition is its influence on serotonin and melatonin pathways, which govern circadian rhythm and emotional stability. The brain does not manufacture these compounds in isolation. It assembles them step by step from nutritional inputs that must already be circulating when night arrives. Without them, the transition into deep sleep becomes fragile and easily disrupted. Healthy fats also play a structural role in brain repair, forming the membranes that allow neurons to communicate with precision and speed. During sleep, these membranes undergo maintenance, repairing microdamage caused by daily electrical activity. When dietary fats are stable and anti-inflammatory, neural membranes remain flexible, improving signal integrity and reducing noise within neural circuits. In contrast, poor quality fats can increase oxidative stress, subtly interfering with the brain's ability to stabilize its internal environment. Minerals such as magnesium and zinc influence how easily neurons release and reabsorb neurotransmitters, shaping the threshold between relaxation and overactivation. At night, these minerals help quiet excessive firing, allowing the brain to shift into synchronized rhythms associated with deep, restorative sleep. This biochemical quiet is not emptiness, but coordination, where billions of cells align their activity in patterns that support repair rather than reaction. Nutrition also affects the brain's sensitivity to stress hormones, which naturally decline at night when conditions are supportive. If the nutritional environment is unstable, cortisol may remain elevated, signaling the brain to stay partially alert even during sleep. Over time, this prevents full engagement in restorative processes and accelerates mental fatigue. The brain's nighttime work is therefore not passive. It is metabolically demanding and exquisitely sensitive to what it has been given to work with. By evening, the goal is not stimulation or excess, but sufficiency and balance. When the bloodstream carries calm-promoting nutrients rather than inflammatory signals, the brain receives a clear message that it is safe to repair rather than defend. This safety allows neural networks to reorganize, emotional memory to soften, and cognitive resilience to rebuild without conscious effort. What we eat at night becomes less about feeding hunger and more about supplying the silent materials of restoration, supporting a brain that heals not through force or stimulation, but through chemistry aligned with its natural rhythm, quietly rebuilding itself while awareness fades and internal order is restored in ways we rarely notice until clarity returns the next day. At night, the brain becomes exquisitely sensitive to inflammation, not because it is weaker, but because this is the window when it attempts to repair the subtle damage accumulated during the day. Inflammation is a normal biological signal, but when it rises at the wrong time, it shifts from a messenger of repair to a saboteur of restoration. Late-night consumption of highly processed foods, excess sugar, or refined carbohydrates can quietly elevate inflammatory markers, even without obvious symptoms. The brain interprets this internal environment as instability, activating immune pathways and stress responses that are incompatible with deep, restorative sleep. Instead of entering synchronized slow-wave rhythms, neural activity becomes fragmented, pulling the brain in and out of lighter sleep stages where repair is limited. This disruption is not traumatic, it often goes unnoticed, yet its effects accumulate night after night. Inflammatory signaling increases oxidative stress, placing neurons in a defensive state rather than a regenerative one. When this happens, energy that would normally be directed towards synaptic repair and waste clearance is diverted toward damage control. The result is a brain that survives the night rather than heals within it. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, is closely tied to this process. Foods that provoke inflammation can keep cortisol elevated into the night, flattening the natural hormonal curve that signals safety and rest. Even small elevations in cortisol can reduce time spent in deep sleep, the phase most strongly associated with brain repair. At the same time, insulin spikes caused by late sugar intake can trigger counter-regulatory stress responses, further amplifying inflammatory signals. The brain is highly responsive to these chemical cues, adjusting its internal priorities based on perceived threat or stability. When inflammatory inputs dominate, the brain prioritizes vigilance, subtly maintaining alertness even while the body appears asleep. Over time, this pattern can impair emotional regulation, slow reaction time, and weaken memory consolidation. Chronic nighttime inflammation has also been linked to accelerated cognitive aging, not because neurons are dying rapidly, but because they are denied consistent opportunities to restore themselves. In contrast, when late-night nutrition minimizes inflammatory burden, the brain is freed to engage in repair without interference. Anti-inflammatory compounds found in whole, minimally processed foods reduce oxidative load and support mitochondrial function, allowing neurons to maintain energy efficiency during sleep. This environment encourages microglial cells, the brain's immune custodians, to shift from a defensive posture to a housekeeping role, clearing debris rather than amplifying alarm signals. The difference between these states is subtle but profound, shaping how refreshed or foggy the mind feels upon waking. The brain evolved to perform its most delicate maintenance in conditions of metabolic calm, not abundance or scarcity, but balance. When nighttime choices respect this requirement, inflammation recedes into the background and repair takes center stage. The brain then works with quiet precision, restoring networks, softening emotional edges, and preparing the mind for clarity and resilience, guided not by conscious effort, but by the absence of unnecessary biological noise as the night deepens and repair proceeds uninterrupted. Memory does not solidify in the moment of experience. It takes shape later, in the stillness of sleep, when the brain revisits the day without the pressure to respond. At night, the hippocampus and cortex engage in a quiet dialogue, replaying patterns of neural activity and deciding which experiences are worth preserving and which can fade. This process, known as consolidation, depends on uninterrupted cycles of deep and dream sleep, each contributing in a different way to learning, emotional balance, and insight. What often goes unnoticed is how sensitive this process is to the body's internal environment, especially the metabolic signals shaped by late-evening food choices. When nutrition destabilizes blood sugar, the brain is pulled out of these cycles in brief, often unremembered awakenings that fragment the architecture of sleep. Even when total sleep time appears sufficient, the quality of these memory-forming stages may be quietly eroded. Stable insulin levels allow the brain to remain in extended periods of slow-wave sleep, the phase most closely linked to strengthening factual and procedural memory. During this time, neural circuits are selectively reinforced, making important connections more efficient while weakening redundant ones. If blood glucose rises and falls abruptly, the brain interprets this as a potential threat, activating arousal systems that interrupt consolidation. Emotional memories are particularly vulnerable to this disruption. During dream sleep, the brain reprocesses emotionally charged experiences, reducing their intensity while preserving their meaning. Fragmented sleep can leave these memories unresolved, contributing to irritability, anxiety, or a sense of mental heaviness the next day. Nutrition that supports gentle digestion and metabolic steadiness helps preserve the continuity of these dream phases, allowing emotional learning to unfold without interference. The brain also uses sleep to integrate new information with existing knowledge, forming insights and creative associations that rarely emerge during waking hours. This integrative work requires extended periods of neural synchrony, which are easily disturbed by internal stress signals triggered by late-night overeating or sugar intake. Over time, repeated disruption of memory consolidation can create the illusion of cognitive decline, not because the brain is losing capacity, but because it is being denied the conditions it needs to organize information effectively. The mind may feel scattered, learning may take longer, and recall may feel less reliable. By contrast, when nighttime nutrition supports metabolic calm, the brain can fully engage in its sorting process, strengthening what matters and letting go of what does not. This selective forgetting is as important as remembering, preventing overload, and preserving mental clarity. Memory consolidation is therefore not just about storing information, but about shaping identity, emotional resilience, and understanding. Each night, the brain edits the story of the day, refining it into something coherent and usable. When we protect this process through thoughtful evening choices, we allow the brain to perform one of its most sophisticated functions without interruption, quietly weaving experience into knowledge as sleep deepens and neural networks settle into the rhythms that make memory durable and meaningful across time.
The brain does not work in isolation, especially at night, when communication with the gut becomes one of its most influential sources of guidance. Hidden within the digestive system is a vast community of microorganisms that produce signaling molecules capable of shaping mood, sleep depth, and neural repair. This gut-brain dialogue is continuous, but after sunset, it becomes more pronounced as external stimuli fade and internal signals carry greater weight. The microbiome influences the production of neurotransmitters and short-chain fatty acids that interact with the nervous system, subtly adjusting how easily the brain enters restorative sleep. When the gut environment is balanced, these signals promote calm neural rhythms and support the brain's transition into deep, synchronized states associated with repair. When it is disrupted, the brain receives mixed messages that can fragment sleep and interfere with restoration. Late-night food choices directly affect this microbial ecosystem, either nourishing beneficial bacteria or favoring strains that produce inflammatory byproducts. Highly processed foods and excess sugar can alter microbial balance within hours, increasing intestinal permeability and allowing inflammatory compounds to enter circulation. The brain senses these changes quickly, responding with heightened vigilance that undermines its ability to disengage fully during sleep. In contrast, foods that support microbial diversity encourage the production of metabolites that strengthen the gut barrier and reduce systemic inflammation. These compounds travel through the bloodstream and vagus nerve pathways, signaling safety and stability to the brain. The vagus nerve, a primary communication highway between gut and brain, becomes especially influential at night, transmitting information about digestive comfort or distress. When digestion is calm, vagal signaling supports parasympathetic dominance, slowing heart rate and quieting neural circuits. This state creates ideal conditions for brain repair, memory integration, and emotional recalibration. Even subtle digestive discomfort can disrupt this signaling, keeping the brain partially alert despite outward signs of sleep. Over time, repeated nighttime gut disturbance can contribute to chronic sleep fragmentation and impaired cognitive resilience. The microbiome also plays a role in regulating circadian rhythm by influencing the timing of hormone release. Certain microbial metabolites help synchronize peripheral clocks throughout the body, reinforcing the brain's master clock and promoting consistent sleep-wake cycles. When this synchronization is disrupted, the brain may struggle to maintain stable rhythms, reducing the efficiency of its nightly repair processes. The relationship between gut and brain is therefore not secondary, but foundational, shaping how deeply and consistently the brain can rest. Supporting this relationship at night is less about quantity of food and more about compatibility with biological timing. When evening choices align with the needs of the microbiome, the brain receives coherent signals that allow it to release vigilance and enter repair. Neural inflammation recedes, sleep deepens, and communication between brain regions becomes more synchronized. The result is not just better digestion or improved sleep, but a brain that awakens with greater clarity and emotional balance. This quiet partnership between gut and brain unfolds without awareness, guided by microbial chemistry and neural signaling, restoring cognitive harmony as the night progresses and internal systems move together toward renewal and stability.